much. No, it's okay. Yeah, we're good.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for our fall Heller Fellow Talk. I'm just going to say hi, and then I'm going to let my colleague introduce our speaker. My name is Max Schulman. I'm an associate professor and theater historian in the theater and dance program here at UCCS, and I'm the director of the Heller Center for the Arts and Humanities. This is one of my favorite occasions. We do 2 fellows a year. We bring in some extraordinary artist or scholar who stays actually at the Heller Center, does work sometimes with our students, sometimes with our faculty, and sometimes just on their own. In this particular case, we've had some, I think, some really neat interaction, which we're especially excited about. This is what the Heller Center does, and so we're thrilled to have it. But I'm going to introduce my colleague, who is also a board member here at the Heller Center, and who brought us Dr. Margilla, Dr. Elena Svetieva from Cannes. Please.
For having to see you tonight. I just want to tell you a little bit about Mark before we start to talk.
Is it a roast?
It's a roast. So Dr. Mark Miller is Senior Research Fellow at the Center for Consciousness and Contemplative Studies in Monash University from my homeland, Australia. He also lends his expertise around various research centers across the world. He has a PhD in philosophy from the University of Edinburgh in the UK. Things going on there right now. A master's degree in mind, language, and embodied cognition thinking, and an undergraduate degree from the University of Toronto, who's now lucky enough to have him back as an affiliated research fellow. So that's like Mark's work I love because it's the embodiment of the humanistic and the scientific. In understanding how the mind works using insight and models of cognitive neuroscience, Mark is interested in what makes us flourish as humans, and the role of contemplative practices like mindfulness in this flourish. He also engages with questions on how our highly mediated and technology-saturated world interacts with our humanity. So he will outline to you today some of those pitfalls when it comes to our well-being. Mark is also a mindfulness teacher and guide who shares his insights and practice with individuals and communities across the world. Mark practices what he preaches. In knowing Mark a little more during his stay here, I feel confident in saying, even without having met all of you, that Mark is likely the happiest person in the room. It's not due to naivety or privilege. It's due to a conscious engagement with joy for the wonders of life, love and kindness to the people he encounters in it, and equanimity to its slings and arrows. So I think on behalf of all of us, when I say Mark, we're really looking forward to learning from you. And please join me in welcoming Mark Miller.
We never introduced me like that ever. That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy that we decided to talk about this topic tonight. I was just saying out in the foyer that something I take very seriously as a researcher is trying to get involved in research projects that actually have an impact, that matter. I never want to just like give a talk where I just talk at you. That's a terrible thing to happen. I'm going to do some of that tonight, but I'm going to try to talk at you things that I hope are useful. So you leave here thinking, oh, wow, maybe it is something I should talk about with social media, or maybe this is the kind of practice I might want to pick up. So we'll aim for that. As the poster says, I'm going to talk a little bit about some revolutionary things that are happening in neuroscience today that are really spooky and cool and revolutionary. It is a provocative time to be a brain scientist. We'll get into that in a second. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how social media in particular can be understood now that we're starting to think about the brain in a different way. And I think that's very important as well, because we are inundated with social media today, and it's not all for the good. And I think we have some folk ideas about why it might be bad. We're starting to, it comes up a lot. We see it a lot in magazines and online, funny enough. But we don't really know necessarily why it's bad. We know there's a tight correlation between social media use and depression. It's hard to know why. There's a lot of factors there. But some of the cognitive frameworks that are evolving right now say something really, I think, interesting about why social media might be challenging for us, and suggest also how we can use it better. And then I'm gonna end the night with Elena's and my current project, which is on gaslighting. Everybody here know what gaslighting is? Yeah, right. So it's sort of a hot topic right now, but there's almost no research. say it a lot, so it's really in the mainstream. We don't really know anything about it. We're quick telling everybody, hey, quit gaslighting. But we don't really know what it means. We don't know how it works. We know that it might be a bit funny. And again, we think that the same framework is going to apply here. So that's what we're going to do. How's that sound? Okay. If you get bored, give me a chicken wing, and we'll talk about something else. Okay. Let me blow your mind now. Okay. So first things first, I work on a new cognitive framework called active inference, sometimes called predictive processing, sometimes called the free energy principle. Has anybody here not heard of this framework? Show of hands, just quickly. Yeah, there's one. Okay. Oh, everybody, excellent. So I'll just start by saying it's a pretty popular framework today. It is arguably the framework today, although it hasn't percolated out into the public sphere necessarily, but it is considered by computational neuroscientists to be the thing. So we have big people, Anil Seth, Andy Clark, Jakob Hui, who's my line director right now at Monash University, Carl Friston, Lisa Feldman-Barrett, have all more or less dedicated their careers to this idea. And it's a pretty amazing idea. One way you can see how amazing it is to start out with what we already think about how the brain works. So I don't know if you knew this or not, from about the time of Rene Descartes. This is Rene Descartes here. I added the glasses. This is more than 100 years ago. From about that time, we had a story about the brain that's only recently getting upset. It's pretty amazing, right? 150 years ago, we had no technology. So this was all just inference that people were making without any real hard tech to back it up. And we've held this story for 150 years without it updated. It's a pretty remarkable thing. From about that time, we thought that the way that perception worked was light comes in from the world, it bounces off of objects, it hits the sensorium, and then the brain processes it from simple through to complex. So you might think the brain sort of starts at dots and then builds up edges and faces and objects, and then objects in context, objects with meaning. And the end result is that we see a meaningful world. Just show of hands, who thinks, just in layman's terms, that's how the brain processes information from the world? Who would have thought that was the story? Yeah, everybody thinks it. Come on. Everybody thinks that. Everybody thinks light comes in from the world, hits your eye, and the brain processes it. That's what gives you the vision of the world. It's wrong. You're completely wrong. According to that story, the brain is a kind of sort of couch potato, right? Brain hangs out. It just waits. It waits for information to come to it, and then it processes that information. Lo and behold, almost exactly the opposite is turning out to be true. The brain, instead of waiting around for information, is radically proactive. It's taking what it learns about the statistical regularities of the world, how the world works, uses that to generate for itself, from the top down, a sort of virtual version of what it expects is happening. Okay?
So it's anticipatory.
Completely. And that helps solve a lot of mysteries. We didn't really know why, when we were looking at the brain, why was there so much top-down circuitry if the brain is primarily processing things from rough to ready? And it turns out, well, one of the reasons was because we had it upside down in a way, or partially upside down. So the brain takes what it knows, builds for itself the world, and that's what you're experiencing. You're experiencing your own expectation about how it is. Now, if that didn't make you feel a bit queasy, you didn't catch it yet. So let me hit you one more time, okay? You are not seeing light from the world. You're not seeing light from the world. You're not seeing me because the light from me is coming to you. You're only using data from the world to update your predictions, and you're seeing your own predictions. So the complex structured world that we're seeing right now is in large part constructed from what we believe about the world and the knowledge that we have about how the world works. Side note, we're going to get to this. Beliefs bloody well matter then. What you believe matters in a really crucial way, because the kind of people you hang out with and the kind of beliefs you have, they will structure your reality. It's not like, oh, I've got some bad beliefs, I'll update them later. No, hold on. Like your experience here is being structured by what you believe. So it becomes really important that we think about belief hygiene. What is it to have a good belief? What kinds of beliefs lead to other good beliefs? what kind of cul-de-sacs do we get stuck in where we get cruddy, crappy beliefs and then we defend them from updating and they make us sick, which is a lot of what we're seeing in the world today. Okay. Right. So in this story, I'm not going to go too much into the technical bits, so you don't have to be scared. All I want to say here is that this system in the brain is hierarchical. So you have stacks of these processes, all doing the same thing, all trying to predict what's going on in the layer down. And that works, it all works, because the prediction you make about what happens next gets matched against the actual evidence you're getting from the world. If there's a mismatch, then there's error. The error propagates forward in the system, recruiting better predictions, and they make a better fit. Still some error that propagates forward in the system, generating new predictions until you get the good, solid grip. The scene, and that is, if this is right, what you are built for. The modus operandi of at least humans, probably all life. Carl Friston thinks anything that's alive works with these same principles, even single-cell organisms. They just do it in a more simple way, which is kind of mystical and lovely and something that I find very attractive about this framework. People rebel against the framework for the same reason. They say, no, it can't be the same to everything, because then you can't disprove it in some important way, and that makes us feel wobbly researchers. I quite like the mystical point that we might be getting close to some of the maths that help life hang together. What was I saying? Sort of got off on that mystical point. Let's just think. Prediction errors, yeah. Right, exactly. So what we're trying to do, our sort of modus operandi of at least humans with brains, is we are trying to get a good grip on uncertainty in the environment. We are uncertainty minimizing machines, making predictions, encountering a world, and then getting them to fit right. That's how we stay alive. And there's a couple ways that we can do that. So for instance, if your temperature drops below the expected amount, expected here is that amount that keeps you alive, right? So the expectation that we have here in the system, the prediction we have is that we will stay at a steady temperature, the one that allows us to live. If your temperature goes down, you start to get errors in the system. The system says, nope, that's not good. We're outside of our window of tolerance. We're outside of our window of life. So two things can happen to help reduce that error. One, we can update the model, right? We can change what we think the bands are on how cold we can be. So if you want to reduce error in the world, you have a prediction. The real world, there's a misstep, so you're getting error. Two ways you can resolve that error. One, you can update the model. You can make the model better fit how it actually is. That resolves the error. We feel better. Okay. Or two, you can get up and change the world. You can change the world to better fit the model. You can get up and go get a cozy sweater and a tea. It's another way that you can resolve the error of being too cold. Okay, are we okay so far? Right? Right. I didn't scare anybody with the fact that you're hallucinating your reality. So it's true. Perception might be a kind of controlled hallucination. Don't be scared. This is Bob Ross. Everybody probably knows Bob Ross. Bob Ross here is being processed by Google's Deep Dream. Deep Dream uses a very similar deep learning hierarchy as I'm presenting here that the brain is. Basically, what it does is it takes any kind of picture and then it makes predictions about what's actually happening in that picture. And the predictions it makes, of course, influences the kind of perception that you're actually having. So here you can tell somewhere high up in the predictive hierarchy, the process is starting to think there must be animals in this scene, right? So now it's taking a noisy data set and it's sort of popping out little animals everywhere that it can. It's just one of the ways that a deep predictive hierarchy can get confused. I want to show you another one too. This is out of Anil Seth's lab, actually created by a friend of mine. This is a VR experience. So the person that you're not going to see them, but it's taken from their perspective. They're wearing a VR helmet, okay? And the scene is being processed using the same hierarchy that we're talking about here. And all they've done is they put in a belief sufficiently high in the hierarchy that says there's a dog, okay? So this just goes to show how easily, if this is how perception works, you can be misled. So deep in the hierarchy is the perception that there is a dog. So can you start to see the dog faces coming out everywhere, right? Right. So the the predictive system is guessing at a sufficiently high level that there must be a dog. So it's checking anywhere that's close to dog-like signals. And it's producing that as an experience. We're using the same hierarchy to better understand schizophrenia today. One of the beautiful things about this framework is it puts perception and hallucination and delusion and dreaming all in a unified framework. It's all just the same thing. It's just whether or not you have your eyes closed or your eyes open. It just has to do with where the system is sampling. Is it closer to the edge that you're actually seeing the world, or has it floated up and it's now sampling from its own predictive hierarchy? So that's interesting. So far, can I give you one more mechanism? Is it enough? Are you having a hard time digesting? Are we good? Okay. I'll give you one more mechanism. This is an important one for when we talk about social media. So far, this is a rather blunt process. The thing that really makes the difference is what's called precision. So precision is a second order prediction. So you're not only making predictions about what's in the world, you're also making predictions about your predictions. Okay, you're making predictions about what sorts of sources of information are valuable in order to get that good grip on the scene. And we call that precision. Okay, so what precision does, it sort of works like a volume, turns the volume up or down on errors or on predictions, so that we can get a better grip. Now, if that's not exactly clear, I can make it clear. Let's say you're walking home in Scotland and you're in the Har. This is the Har, the fog that comes in Scotland. And let's say you're walking along a path that you know very, very well, but that you can't see because of the fog. One thing that is very sharp about this predictive system is it can turn the volume down on the reliability of your vision, right? Your vision is not useful here for making a good prediction about what happens next. It's not giving good data. And it can turn the volume up on your memories of walking home so that you get a felt sense that you're on a path even though you don't see the path. Now, an even better one is if you're singing in the shower. Okay, so imagine you're at home, you've got a radio in the shower, okay, and you're playing a song you've never heard before, and then I walk in, don't be scared, and I peek around and I say, okay, how clearly can you hear the song? And you would say, well, probably not clearly, because the water is making all of this white noise. Okay, now let's say you put on your favorite song. You can try this. You can actually go home and try this. We have good evidence for this. Put on your favorite song, and then I come in and say the same thing. How clearly could you hear the song? You said I heard very, very, very clearly. Why? This is amazing. Because the brain will turn the volume down on all the white noise and turn the volume up on your memory of the song, and it'll fill in the noisy gaps. Remarkable. Remarkable. If you'd like one place where it's kind of poignant today in our political social landscape, Lisa Feldman Barrett has written an incredible article in the New York Times called "When a Gun is Not a Gun." It's about figuring out maybe what's going on, the sort of string of shootings that we've seen in the United States, where police officers are shooting young African-American men, saying they had a gun, and in fact, they didn't have a gun. Either they were pulling on their pants or they had a pager. You know, this has happened.
A hamburger.
So she says, that so far what we've thought is either they're lying, which could of course be the case, or they're confabulating after the fact. They've changed their memories about, because it's a horrible thing that's happened, and that's one of the ways the brain copes. She says that there's a third possibility if this framework is right, and that is you're not seeing what's out in the world anyway. You're seeing your best guess about what's happening in the world. And if you have implicit bias, or you're in a dangerous neighborhood, or whatever else, you could take noisy data and you might make a gun out of the noisy data, that they may have actually seen a gun, because we are seeing our top-down expectations rather than seeing the actual world. Provocative and important to get that right, I think.
Could you say a little bit about how reactivity and fear
Yeah.
works in that equation as well?
Right. So we're not going to talk about it tonight, but the way that we make these predictions isn't only like your knowledge set. It's deeply embodied. So the things that you're feeling, actually, we're going to talk about it a little bit. The things that you're feeling are always tuning the system. So intersection plays a really special role in the hierarchy. So the things that you feel, they drag the predictions towards them, right? So if you go home after a horror movie, you're likely to experience little bumps and creaks as predators or monsters or whatever else, right? It's true. The reason is because your arousal is giving you information. It's saying something's probably wrong. And so then you are factoring that into your top-down prediction. And so you're tuning your experiences to better fit the embodied model. I'll just say quickly, that's why also we have a really hard time getting along with other humans. Because if we are only seeing what we predict, then you get into these nasty loops. So I'm up here and I think I'm giving a kind of crap talk. So now I'm turning the volume up on all of your little signals that are telling me this is kind of a crap talk. And then that makes me feel weird, which makes me act weird, which makes you notice that I'm acting weird. And you think, why is he acting weird? Which makes you act weird. And then I think that you're acting weird, which makes me act super weird. And we get lost in this weird back and forth virtual reality where we're co-creating a not very nice experience. Okay, let me show you how it works. A picture. Okay. Can you tell what it is? Don't say if you know. Can you tell what it is? Can you tell what it is? No. So we've got a data. This is a noisy data set. See, I can't help but see it. My generative model has already been tuned. Here we go. I'm going to tune it for you. Boom. Okay. And now, can you unsee it? No. As soon as you have the right predictive set, then you can't unsee it. It's already filling in the gaps, even though, of course, it doesn't actually change the visual experience, but you can't not see the woman kissing the horse. Have you seen a hollow mask illusion? No, good, excellent. There's a hollow mask illusion. And okay, this is a hollow mask. It doesn't change from convex to concave. It is a convex face. So it's a mask, hollow, with one light source, and then they're going to turn it around in a circle. Okay, so there's a mask. Very ordinary so far, right? That's what you'd expect with a mask turning. And now there's the weird part. Oh, that makes me feel funny. Right? And then again, it looks like it's concave there. And there's the convex face. So it looked convex even when it was concave, right? Let's do it one more time. It's always fun to feel weird. Okay, there's the concave face, convex face. And oh, yeah, super weird. Okay, why does that happen? Okay, because you live in a world where people only have faces that come this way. Okay, so you have really high prediction that faces come this way. So when there's noisy data, a hollow mask turned to its side is noisy. It could be one way or the other, because with one light source, it gives a sort of illusion. If it's a noisy data set, the brain automatically fills in the gaps, makes it concave or convex, because you live in a world of convex faces. If you had 50-50 convex and concave faces on Earth, then you would not be privy to this illusion, because the predictive hierarchy would not be squashing the errors. It would just go, oh yeah, maybe it's one of those weird concave. Okay, and that's exactly what I said. How's that so far? Cool. I mean, you hallucinate your reality. How cool is that? Right? Just a take home. This is one of the reasons why, like, optimism and pessimism are real things. If you have an optimist friend and a pessimist friend, let's say we invite two people here, they take the exact same route and they show up and then actually ask them, how was your experience? I mean, we all know what they're going to say, right? The pessimist goes, oh my God, the world's terrible. The bus smelled like pee, and I looked outside, everybody's unemployed, and it was too bright here in Colorado. And then you ask the optimist, they have the exact same data set. Say, well, how was it? It was lovely. And somebody had a puppy on the bus, it peed, but how cute is that? You're selectively sampling different sets. So here's a take-home message. You take in, this is a rough and ready number, okay? But you take in about 16 billion bits of information a second. It's a lot. Okay? You're aware, consciously aware of 15,000. That's a big pie and a little slice. Okay? So your reality is made up of that little slice. The fact is, you could be experiencing a lot of other kinds of slices. And that has everything to do with your expectations for how it is. So if the world isn't exactly the way you want it to be, it might not be the world. It may also be your interpretive model that's selectively sampling, turning the volume up on some things, the volume down on other things, and lo and behold, every waiter gets your meal wrong. Right? We know people like that, right? Oh my goodness, the glass is dirty every time. Exhausting. Okay. Are we good? Can we go a little bit further? I want to give you a little bit more of the. Is this okay? Do we have an hour? Yeah, I think I'm going to fill the whole space. Is that all right? I'm going to give you guys little times to ask questions along the way, but I still got lots more to go, so we'll have to see how far we get. You guys are a great audience, so it seems fun to do this stuff. And nobody's heard about this stuff, so I think it's all cool and fresh for you. We're used to pitching this to other neuroscientists and neurologists. Okay, My work is particularly on emotions and the role that emotion plays. So originally, we thought that interception worked exactly like extraception, like I've already been telling you, except for the signals that you're predicting, of course, are bodily signals, and the predictions that you're making are about the source of those signals. So for instance, the signals from the body turn out to be, you make expectations like I have an itch or I'm hungry or anything else. You're making predictions about the body, you're using body signals as the data. It wasn't long before researchers expanded on that idea, and they started saying, well, look, it's not exactly like extraception. Interception actually plays a really special role. Probably it sits at the center. This is what we were just saying. It sits at the center of the hierarchy, like a pacemaker in the brain. So the things that you're feeling act like gravity for all of the other predictions. So one of the reasons why emotion regulation abilities are really important, because your emotions are going to dictate which predictive sets you're sampling from. Okay, but actually, I've been working for the last 5 years on yet another way that emotion impacts this whole process. And this isn't too technical, if you find it interesting. And the way to get at what I've been working on is to start by appreciating that in this framework, rewards too are flipped on their head. So we know a lot about reward circuitry, like what is it to get rewarded? According to this framework, rewards are just highly expected states. So why do you like cake? Because you expect to have a certain blood sugar level, and cake gets you there. Okay. So why do you like cigarettes? Because you expect to have a certain level of nicotine, and the cigarette gets you there. Okay. So now rewards are highly expected states. The fish expects to be in water. When it's out of water, it's in pain. And every step it takes towards the water is a rewarding step. Okay. So now we get a new view of valence, a new view of good and bad feelings. Good and bad feelings are tuning mechanisms that keep you in touch with those things that get you closer to where you expect to be. When you get closer to, when you get a better grip on the scene, it feels good. When you get a broken grip, when things are too volatile, hunger, homelessness, being in a war zone, having somebody make fun of you, and these are all things where you're losing your grip. There's volatility in the world, and that kind of feels bad. So there's this really nice story that we're starting to tell, where feelings literally tune the predictive system towards those better than and worse than slopes of error reduction. When you're doing good at predicting, it feels good. When you do bad, it feels bad. There's some hardcore mathy stuff you don't have to worry about. It basically just sort of exemplifies the thing I was just saying. Two things here, maybe. One, if this is right and we think it's right, then it solves one worry that people had called the dark room worry. So if you're a predictive system and you're trying to get a maximally good predictive grip, so you're trying to really like reduce any errors, then why don't we just lock ourselves in a dark room and put in an intravenous line? Then there's no uncertainty. There's nothing worrisome, right? Why doesn't that sound awesome? I just, oh yeah. And sometimes I joke, like in my PhD, I think I actually didn't feel like that. I was like, oh yeah, like a sensory deprivation tank for like a week would be so nice. But more than a week, it's torture, right? So one of the things we've had to work out is, why is it that a prediction error minimizing animal wouldn't just go to a highly expected state? And the reason is because you are all the time being rewarded by finding good slopes of error reduction. You don't really have to worry about this too much, but the take home is we feel good when we resolve error, not when we have no error. So a lot of our work right now is about how we find the right errors. We love solving puzzles, for the right kinds of puzzles. Too much volatility, chaotic. Too little, boring. We're always looking for the Goldilocks zone, okay? And the reward system is always tuning us to where there are the best places to reduce error. I don't know if that's going to come back. Is that okay so far? Are we good? Is it a bit weird? Am I going too technical? Is anybody losing the plot? No? Okay.
Those formulas were pretty.
Yeah, forget them. Don't even think about it. Yeah. I brought it there just so that I can show some evidence, but don't worry about that. You can just trust me today. I'll just tune your precision for you. You just trust me. I'm the bona fide source of information. Okay. Now on to the good stuff. Why does social media screw us up? Okay. So living well as a predictive system means being able to manage volatility and uncertainty in our environment over the long term. Does that make sense? If it's too volatile, that means death. We've gone too far outside of our predictive range. We highly expect as life forms to be fed, to be clean, to have medicine, to be whole, to be uninjured. When we move away from that, it harms us, and that bad feeling is part of what tunes us back. That's why when we get burned, we don't touch it again. That just tuned our system to not make the expectation to touch the stove again, right? And for that to work, for us to get a continual good grip on the chaos around us, we need a good model of how things work. We need that. We need, and it's not an accurate model, at least a useful model. That means like you have to really know how the world works if you want to be able to manage volatility. If you go to a new city, you get culture shocks sometimes. Culture shock is an example of there's a ton of volatility and your model doesn't help you digest it very good, right? So you want to have a good model. A good model is going to be paramount for you getting a good grip on your scene. Okay, and if you have a bad generative model, if you have a bad belief network, then you're going to be fraught with difficult to resolve errors, like if you believe the world is flat. Okay, if you are a flat earther, I hope nobody is very sorry about it. Yeah. If you believe the world is flat, this is a very hard life, I think. Because there's a lot of counter evidence for that. Okay, so now you've got this weird belief set in play, and you're tuning your life around that belief set. You're getting all this error back. People look at you like, oh my God, are we going to invite him to Thanksgiving again? I mean, it's only like flat earther conference stuff the whole time. There's like a ton of errors in the world, right? So what do you do with that kind of error? So one thing I'm really interested in is how this framework helps us better understand conspiracy theories and how we get locked in. So if we go back to the way that you can resolve error, there's two ways that you can do it. Now you've got a bad belief in that, however I got there. Okay, two ways you can resolve the error. One, you can change the model to better fit the world. What would that look like? The CIA is behind it. All the pilots on Earth are part of a club. That's what it is. That's how I resolve the error. You're telling me it's not like that. I'm telling you, you're totally naive. Everyone's naive but me. That's another belief you can get installed that would help you get rid of that error. That's very natural. It's just what the system is built to do. It's built to resolve errors. Problem here is you've got a bad belief. The bad belief is now driving the error minimizer. So now you're just going to build a self model that better fits your spooky belief set. The other thing you can do is you can act on the world to make it better fit the model. So what do? Hang out with flat earthers. Stay in little echo chambers online. Only go to those places where people are going to go, oh yeah, it's flat. You're right. How are we going to follow up? I have no idea.
How much do you know about the people in Colorado Springs?
It's been real. Well, there you go. Okay, so I hope you can see there's a sort of nasty feedback loop that happens there, right? If you get a bad belief network in there, through these feed forward and feedback loops, you might end up creating the world that you expect to live in. That's one of the nasty parts of this framework, is that beliefs turn out to self-confirm. It's important to have good beliefs, as you might just show up in the world where that's real for you. And then it's really hard to get people out of that because it's self-confirming. Yeah, we see that a lot today, right?
Yep.
Okay. And it turns out that social media is a spectacularly effective method of giving you bad beliefs. That's why it's dangerous in part. For instance, we can use heavy filters that make people look very different than they normally do. Literally, just with a swipe of the finger, you can take all sorts of pictures until it looks just right. Have you seen these funny YouTube videos where you actually see what goes into making somebody look fresh and spontaneous? And it's like 100 photos, and it's like a whole crew, and that's just you showing up in the world. Like, I love this quote. This is about a social media influencer, and she says on her blog post, I'll give you a little insight about how I start my day in a positive way. I mean, who starts their day like that? Exactly right. Like, no. Instagram's lie factory made us to feel inadequate. It's true. Okay, so now you have it. Now, the more time you spend online, and the more precision you give it, because all your friends talk about it, that means it's a really confident place to go and get good data about the world. What's the world like? You check out Instagram, which is the most fraudulent place to figure out what the world is like. But the world's absolutely not like that. Okay? Now the nasty part about all of this is that if that is a high precision channel and you're getting a lot of bad evidence that the world is like this, and your life is not like that, and nobody's life is like that. It's not like that for her either. Okay? What ends up happening is it ends up bleeding into your generative model. Now you expect the world to be like this. And now everywhere that you see the world isn't like that, guess what that counts as? That's a misfit. This is set up the generative model. That's your prediction now. Now your life is an error. Every time you see your life, you kind of feel bad. What does that do? Well, you could update your model. But actually, that's not what we end up doing here. Part of the reason is because it's a little bit more costly to start thinking like, oh, maybe it's not really like that. Because then you have to go meet them, and there's like a whole bunch of things, right? Easier thing to do is you just get back on Instagram, where you're getting confirming data. And then you look at yourself and you feel bad, so you get back to Instagram. You look to your life and it doesn't fit right, so you get back to Instagram and get this nasty feedback loop. Worse still, and this is a big concern, I think, today, is people are starting to care more about their avatars than what they are actually like as people. We have some good research for this. And if that's the case, and you're constantly filtering yourself, then you get an expectation of yourself that doesn't fit what you really are. And then every time you encounter yourself for real, you feel bad.
Depression.
And that's exactly what happens. Because consistently doing worse than expected at resolving error, consistently being in a state of volatility is what depression is. That's what produces depression, anxiety disorders, dissociative disorders. They all build out of the same basic raw material, which is you have an expectation that you are unable to resolve. Okay? Okay. Just as a side note, have you heard of Snapchat surgery? Is this new to some people? This is true. Okay, today almost they did a longitudinal, they did a cross-sectional study and asked a ton of plastic surgeons in North America, and they found out something like 98% have now had patients come to them with their filtered image and said, I need to look like my filtered image. Okay, and there's been a massive bump in body modification since social media has become large and in charge. And this is actually an app that was taken off of Snapchat, where you could see what the surgery would look like. So that was actually on the social media app. So you check to see what the surgery would look like for you, give you directions on how to get it. This has been since removed, but I mean, it's not the only one on the market. It's kind of everywhere. The reason why I'm putting it up there is I just want to say, like, this becomes really understandable in some way, given the framework, because you have a bunch of error. Okay, you really expect to look one way, you don't. There's a bunch of error. You are built to resolve error. Yes, you could get offline, but what if you're an influencer and you're making all of your money on? Then it's not so easy. You have to be online. So you're still getting pervasive error. How do you resolve the error? Well, you can change the model to better fit the expectation. You can change yourself. In some ways, this is no different than grabbing a blanket to warm you up when you're cold. The problem, though, is that you're trying to confirm predictions that are faulty, or predictions that are being generated in a sort of virtual world that doesn't really have much to do with the real world. Dangerous. Attention.
That's very scary.
It is very scary. I know. But understandable. Okay, so depression, just quickly, if you have ongoing volatility for too long, that's stress in the body, it's experiences stress in the body. Of course, at some point in time, you're going to have the HP axis tips, which means like, you only have a finite amount of energy. You only have so much metabolism. You have ongoing stress, then the nervous system goes, okay? And then you start having the sickness behaviors that we see in depression because you have no juice left. But a little bit more worrisome than that in a predictive system is if you do less good, okay, if you can't get a good predictive grip for a long enough period of time, something really nasty happens for predictive systems like us. You might install a high-level belief that says, I cannot get a good predictive grip. So now you've got a new belief stuck. The belief is, I can't make it work. As soon as that belief happens, what do you think happens to the rest of the system? Now you have think about the dog. You put a dog in high enough, and it filters down, and it makes everything look like dogs. What if you get a sufficiently high-level belief that says, I can't make it work? Then what happens? the world shows up to you as a place where you can't make it work. Now you're turning the volume up on all the depressive type data. You're turning the volume down on anything that counteracts that. And we have good evidence for that. Did a really interesting study. They took people who have critical, serious, massive, major depression. Okay, everybody has depression. So everybody here, I'm not going to get you to put up your hands because we're recording this. I get you to hold up your hands. Everybody's going to say, I've been depressed. Everybody's depressed. Okay. Actually, it's a normal part of life to go through little depressions. I'm talking about really clinical, serious, major depression. Okay. They took them and they gave them a pager, and then they called them randomly over a number of months, and they got them to write down in their journal what they were feeling at that time. Okay. They asked them, how often are you depressed? And they say, we're depressed all the time. I wake up depressed, I eat depressed, I live depressed, I fall asleep depressed, I dream depressive things, I wake up depressed. Okay, it's 100% of the time. After this study, what they found was they're only depressed about 9% of the time. 91% of the time, they're either neutral or in positive affective states. How can you get so wrong? Well, because you have a noisy data set. The system's turning the volume up on the 9% to make it 100%, turning the volume down on everything else. Say, are you depressed? You have to use your memory to tell somebody that. Well, let me think. Yeah, all the time. You forget all the good stuff. And that happens anytime you set something high enough in the hierarchy, potentially. Okay. I've got 12 more minutes and I'm on the last bit, so we're gonna make it. This is are we okay so far? Is it cool? Yeah, are we still interested? Okay, right on. Okay. Learn anything useful yet? Yeah, good. Right on. Maybe it's just one quick practice here. Gratitude journals are not hippy trippy, fluffy nonsense. They're real stuff. Why? Think. Okay. You set aside time every day to think of 3 reasons why you're grateful. Never overlap. Try to actually give a shit when you do it too. Okay. So when you go, wow, I'm literate. Take a second and blow your mind. Be like, wait a second. Oh my God, like I have all of the books humans have ever written. Okay, you gotta mean it. You gotta feel it. Okay, do 3. They never overlap. For the first month, it's gonna be easy-ish. You'll get to 100 at the end of the month. It's a cool exercise anyway. If you keep going, what happens is the brain starts freeing up real estate to try to figure out what's good in the world, because you are pinning every day a high level expectation that things are good. It'll get stuck. The same way as depression gets stuck. It gets stuck. What happens if you insert it's good high enough in the predictive hierarchy? Oh my God, it's good. And it is good. But I'm not talking about just putting on rose tinted glasses out of here. We already lean way to the negative side. This is about rebalancing and coming sort of upright in a way. So the same thing that catches you in a bad way also turns out to be a really powerful way of getting into good spaces too. You just have to do it long enough that the belief set gets stuck sufficiently high, and then it changes the perception, which is one of the reasons why I'm so happy.
Doesn't change the brain chemistry.
The good news is neuroplasticity. The brain can be anything. That's good and bad, because the brain's stupid and smart. It'll be anything. Like if you spend all your time thinking about Jennifer Aniston, the brain will just make Jennifer Aniston modules. It'll just be like track Jen, and then that'll be the world. The world will show up as like, what's Jen doing? Okay, so you have to think like, what have you been putting your energy into? If it's like seeing cute bums, then that's what your brain is doing. Your brain's a cute bum detector. If you start today and you make a commitment today, okay, honestly, if you make a commitment today to be the best detector of the color red in the world, your brain will start freeing up real estate in order to make you a good detector of the color red. And every time you see red, the reward system will turn on and say, yeah, we got closer to the expectation. Turn it up. And you're going to become a good red detector over time, which is kind of a stupid thing to do. So stop putting energy into the things that make you feel terrible. Because the more you do them, the more they become beliefs, and the more they self-confirm, and the more you want to do them. Stop that if you can, as best you can. And it's not going to change overnight. These are habit systems, so they take 3 months or something to change. But if you start implementing good beliefs now, really, that's why meditation works. Like meditation is a big umbrella for like a lot of different practices, but things like love and kindness, like caring about other people, thinking you wish other people were well, has a real positive impact. And this is one of the reasons, is because your experience of the world is being created from the inside out. Buddhists were right all along. life is a kind of weird dream. You're dreaming it. You can have a bad dream or a good dream. And the good news is that you have some control, actually, although it can be slow. So don't kick yourself in the bum when it doesn't work right away. You have to keep at it. Gaslighting. Okay, now we're into the gaslighting section. Does anybody here not know what gaslighting is? Have you not bumped into this yet? There's one person. Everybody knows, you don't know? Great. That's it's like it's already well. Gaslighting is a term that came from a play back in the 30s, 38, I think. And what was the play actually called? Was it called Gaslight?
Gaslight.
Yeah, exactly. And it was about this is Ingrid Bergman. She was the actress in the black and white picture of the play. And it's about her partner is has killed her rich aunt, and he's every night going over there and rummaging around in her aunt's house looking for a treasure. Okay, and every time he turns on the light in the aunt's house, it dims the light in Bergman's house. So she knows something funny is going on. But then he systematically undercuts all of her beliefs. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, that didn't happen. Oh, you're hysteric. You know, women today, hysteria. You're hallucinating it. You're just trying to catch me out. Why are you so pathological? Geez, you're such a narcissist. Like this. And that's exactly the sort of things that gaslighting is now being used for. So we've adopted this term and we use it specifically for a kind of psychological abuse. And it's a kind of abuse that comes when somebody makes you doubt your reality. So you're having an experience, and somebody comes and undercuts that experience. And that can include a lot of different kinds of tactics. Even just, I just laid them out. You can say your memory is faulty, or you're hallucinating your reality, and don't use that on each other. Right? But the one thing that we really want to make, Eleanor and I are working on this right now. So I'm not going to say actually this is going to be the shortest part of the talk. I'm just going to sort of like whet your appetite for it, and then look forward to our papers and research and hopefully book on this. Okay. But one thing we really want to stand out is this is a form of abuse. So the place to correctly use gaslighting here is going to be when you actively want to harm or control somebody else. Okay, I'm going to come back to that in a second, but the definition that we're working to make sure it's clear is when you do it actively. So this isn't just about having a different opinion. We're saying, I don't remember that. It's not that. We're going to come back to that in a second. But this is like, like Charles Manson is a good example. He wanted to control these young women to make them do horrendous things. What did he do? He jeopardized their belief systems, gave them LSD, which actually, we have good research now, makes high-level belief networks very malleable and fluid. So actually you're creating a bunch of uncertainty in the brain. And then he stands in as the, I know, you don't know, I know. And then the acid's also making you feel like, oh shit, I don't know. He's like, but I know. And then suddenly you say, oh, well, maybe you do know.
Fill the void.
Right, indeed. Okay, so we know from the research already that like persistent gaslighting in this abuse style creates anxiety disorders, depression, and learned helplessness. Already, we should be mapping a little bit why this is interesting for me. These are the same symptoms that we find when we can't get a good predictive grip that I've already been looking at in addiction, depression, OCD, dissociative disorders. It's the same collection. Okay, and it turns out that we think the exact same sorts of things are happening. Without me even explaining to you, can you get why gaslighting would be so dangerous to our kind of system now that I've said what we do, right? You are built to get a good grip on how it is. Gaslighting, like, actively and importantly undermines that project. It says your prediction models are garbage. They're not working. You're not getting a good grip. You are losing your grip. And you say that over and over and over again. You're basically undercutting somebody's capability of predicting well how it goes. So this isn't some, like, we're starting to see this a little bit. I'm going to come to this in a second, but we're seeing this a little bit in politics today. And the biggest thing I want you to take from this is it's not like this is a nice, easy thing. I know, like, the fact that it's a psychological form of abuse, I mean, already we know, like, it's a serious thing, but I really want you to take home, like, it's a really serious thing. If you are an epistemic agent, if your whole, like, modus operandi is to figure out how it is, then to have somebody that you trust come in and, like, break up your ability to predict well is fundamentally bad. It's fundamentally bad. So where social media causes that disruption by giving you like a higher expectation than you can actually reach, that's why you get all this volatility that you can't manage. Here, in gaslighting, you're getting that volatility put in by people saying your models don't work, your models don't work, your models don't. Okay, and precision turns out to be really a really important point here. We're going to be working a lot to see how social dynamics set precision. This is not really showing up right now in the research. It's going to be something that we're going to do. So when I was talking before about precision turning up and down dials, it turns out that like social dynamics are going to play a really important role there. I mean, that makes sense. When we were kids, we looked. Have you ever seen a kid fall and then they look to their parents because they don't know if they should cry? And the parent goes, oh, and the kid goes, ah. And if you have like a cool parent who goes, right on, then the kid goes, oh, cool. You know? It's because they don't know how to tune yet. So they're looking to go, how do I tune? So that's because kids don't have a very well produced model. Now, this is conjecture right now. This is our hypothesis, but we're going to work towards this. And I think it's right. Because they don't have a very good model, they're offloading the responsibility on other confidence sources in the world. So we have that in us. So normally that grows out of us as we get a better grip on how things are. We grow up and out of that, but you would expect those things to be re-injected. That would be another style that would show back up again in gaslighting scenarios, I suspect, because you're doing the same sort of thing. You're jeopardizing the model. And so then they're going to have to find good confidence somewhere. And lo and behold, here's somebody standing in to be the authority. And that's happening a lot today in our politics. So we're really interested to see how this scales up. That's one great thing about this cognitive framework that we're working with. It's actually scale free, meaning it applies to any size system. So we can talk about very simple systems and we can talk about governments using exactly the same language. So I'm working with labs right now, looking at addiction for societies. You can use addictive frameworks using this cognitive framework, and you can blow it up and you can think about what is community addiction. So pretty cool. I don't have time to talk about it today, but it's one of the features of using this framework, which I think is pretty amazing. Last but not least, in our last 1 minute, it is not identical with conflict. I just want to make sure that we're walking away. Here's one of the take homes. I want you to take home the fact that gaslighting is not the same as just conflict or disagreement. You can have differing opinions on what happened and you can yell at each other. That's not gaslighting. Okay? That's just good conflict. You should have that. Why? Because if you don't have that, you might end up as a flat earther. And then you use gaslighting as your tool to keep your bad belief network. So then you end up getting stuck in the thing that leads to pathology. I think this is so fascinating and provocative, and I hope it becomes part of the public discourse. We can use the idea of gaslighting in a way that leads to pathology. And then it's the idea of gaslighting that's causing the problem rather than it actually being gaslighting. Because as soon as you say, I've got a bad belief set, I don't want to update it, you're gaslighting. Because I believe the world's corrupt. Then that's a really dangerous bit of armor that's going to keep those bad belief networks going over long. So fighting is good, disagreement is good. I think this happened, you think that happened, that's not what happened, that's not gaslighting. Okay, gaslighting is where somebody sets out on purpose to take away your autonomy by jeopardizing your generative model structure and function, and then standing in as an authority so that they can take your power and do something with it. And that's a pretty scary thing. And getting clear on what the cognitive mechanisms are, I think, is important, an important project, because I hope it'll help us figure out how to avoid it, how to identify it, and how to maybe grow past it. And that's me.